Hello, Bulldog Nation. This is Gardner-Webb University President William Downs, and this is episode 5 of a little show that we call First Downs. First Downs is our chance to introduce you to some of the people who make Gardner-Webb so special and who make Gardner-Webb so great. And today we are visiting Mount Calvary Baptist Church here in Shelby, North Carolina, and I'm joined by pastor and Gardner-Webb alumnus, the Reverend Dr. Lamont Littlejohn. Lamont, how you doing, sir?
I'm doing well. How you doing?
Doing fine. Good to see you. Happy New Year. Appreciate you joining us here for this show.
Thank you for being here.
All right, so let's start episode 5 with a little bit of the Reverend Dr. M. Lamont Littlejohn Jr. biography. All right, here goes. Since 2003, Lamont has been the senior pastor here at Mount Calvary, the 12th person to hold that position in the church's history. He has Bachelor of Arts, Master of Divinity, and Doctor of Ministry degrees from GWU. Folks, that's 3 degrees from Gardner-Webb University. Dr. Littlejohn has also served as an adjunct professor at GWU, and starting in January of 2025, he's been elected to chair the Gardner-Webb University Board of Trustees. Congratulations on that.
Thank you, sir.
A native of Kings Mountain, North Carolina, Lamont Littlejohn began preaching at the young age of 17. I know we want to talk about that. And he started his pastoral ministry at age 26. If you go to the Mount Calvary Baptist Church website, and we hope that you will read the following. Quote, under his leadership, the congregation has experienced spiritual growth in God's Word and spiritual direction in the effectiveness of doing ministry. Mm-hmm. We'll talk about that action-oriented ministry here in a moment. Lamont Littlejohn has traveled extensively throughout this country, but also studied tours across the globe, including Israel, Egypt, Turkey, Greece, and in Kenya, where he preached and taught. He has an amazing family. I've met the family. Lamont is married to his best friend, Nikki, and together they have a daughter, Lamia, and a son, Lamont III. We're just so happy to have you as part of the Gardner-Webb University family. Appreciate you
Most definitely
coming to have this conversation with us today. And let's get into the conversation. Let's talk about this place.
Yeah.
Let's talk about this place. If my research is correct, and I hope it is, Mount Calvary Baptist Church has its roots dating back to 1926.
correct.
The current building opening its doors in 1928. Mm-hmm. So you're closing in on centennial.
Correct.
Tell us about this place. Tell us about your church, its mission, and what this place means to you.
Yeah, this is Mount Calvary has always been a beacon in the city of Shelby. It's always been one of those churches that was, as you call, a stakeholder on the forefront of different things throughout history, whether it was civil rights or missions or ministering to the community. So I'm just grateful to be able to carry on that legacy. And I believe our mission is to help people reach their full potential. In Jesus Christ. And we want to make sure we reach lost souls. We want to make sure that we are teaching biblical, foundational teaching. It's shameful that across the pulpits in America and others that the Bible is not being taught. And when I say that, I want to make sure we are teaching it from its correct principles and right interpretations, and making sure we are hopefully answering those questions that people have so many questions too, and trying to deal with the hustle and bustle of life. And so Mount Calvary wants to be that community headquarters. I always have challenged the congregation by saying to them, if we were to close down the doors, shut down the whole thing of church here on Carolina Avenue, would people miss us? And I want to make sure we are doing things within our community that if we were to leave, they would ask, where are they? And so that's the main thing, making sure they're seeing Jesus Christ, making sure they are loved, making sure we are advancing the kingdom of God. And so all those things, we're trying to be all those things to people. and making sure they see Jesus in us. That's Mount Calvary.
Not only would they ask, where are they?
Yeah.
They probably rebuild you.
Yeah,
Right?
exactly.
Because they need you.
That's the hope.
So we've now got a little distance from that little thing we went through 5 or so years ago called a pandemic. How did COVID impact what you were doing here? How did it impact attendance and your ability to get your message out?
Yeah. I think we were one of the churches that was ready and didn't know we was ready, right? We had text alerts, we had live stream, we had Zoom, we had all those things that deals with the technology of how to have a virtual conversation in different spaces. We just wasn't using it because we was comfortable being in person. So when it hit and we needed to talk with our congregation, well, we could do a conference call, we could do Zoom, we could do all these other things, live stream, and we didn't have to, call a company and say, can you set this up? It was already there. So we were blessed that we were somehow ahead of the game, want to be trendsetters. So we started doing that years in advance of COVID. So once COVID hit, the next Sunday we was immediately telling everybody to go to our live stream. Even those of you now, the only thing was helping our older seniors to understand how to navigate
Right.
Zoom and live stream and YouTube, Facebook. And I think some of them, they was introduced to Facebook when COVID hit. They ain't never seen, what's that book called? and so they're now on Facebook. And so I believe us telling them, and what we did every Saturday at 10 o'clock, we would have, of course, we had text alerts, and we would have the membership to call in. And so our health team would give them an update on COVID, what's going on, or how can you get this, get that. And then I would give a devotion. I would give an overview where we are, how you doing, just a sense of they can hear my voice, they can hear each other's voices, and they could encourage one another. And so in that space of COVID, the only thing that we were not doing was meeting in person. We devised a system how they could give money, how they could still do missions, things of that nature. And of course, they was, again, online. So I think everybody who didn't want to be a global preacher or a TV evangelist became one during COVID, of course. But that did not impact us as much as I thought it would, because we were ready for it. We just didn't know we were until it happened. But we're just grateful that our media team and others thought that, hey, let's go ahead and tap into this live stream. Let's tap into Zoom. Let's tap into text alerts. Let's tap into understand how to do conference calls and things of that nature. Now, in coming back, you would think everybody would be running back into the church. And so when we got back into in person, it wasn't like the church was filled. Right, slowly but surely people started coming back.
Because they could still watch at home, right?
Exactly. And what that, a lot of people saw it as a negative, I saw it as a positive. I see it as we still can get the gospel out. And we would never go back to just using buildings like we once did back in the day. That's not going to happen anymore, because you have that virtual space. And so now we have people who consider themselves virtual members. We have people who may never step foot in this space again, but they are watching us every Sunday. And then you have people who are not even in Shelby, not even in North Carolina. We've had people who have transitioned or migrated from other spaces, and they was watching us before they came. So they were saying, okay, we get ready to move to this Shelby area. Let's check out and see what churches are there. So we've had several members who have joined now, but they started watching us from Ohio or from New York, and they said, wow, we got to check out that worship space. And so that's a blessing unto itself too. Now we're trying to figure out, how do we have a minister that is really now a minister of the virtual space? Because we now have to tap into those members who had never stepped foot in person, but how do we meet their needs virtually?
So you've got global reach.
Right.
I will tell you from personal experience, my daughter Rachel watches you from Onslow County. And
Really?
she also says, wow. So we hear a lot. Let's talk about the place, even though we're now in a space where there's virtual and physical.
Right.
I've always thought that churches are special places.
Yeah, it is.
And I've had the benefit and the good fortune of visiting lots of them across the country and around the globe. And,
Right.
and I think churches are built intentionally.
Right.
What is your favorite spot, your favorite place? Is there a place that's more meaningful than others? Is it just the pulpit? Is it right in here, or is it somewhere else?
It's here.
Okay.
It's in this space. No matter what type of week I've had, no matter what type of Sunday morning prior to preaching I've had, if I can just get to this space here, behind this sacred desk, there's something different here. There's something spiritual that happens. It's not just about preaching, but it's about how can I empty myself and help others who may be going through far worse than I've went through this week. It's something about this place. I could be not feeling well, headache, sore throat, whatever. I could have been coughing all the way to church. And then when I get here, I don't cough none. Then after service, of course. It's just something special about this place. And also through the week, I will come in here and just sit on the front pew and just breathe and just look around, even with the stained glass windows, things of that nature, and try to sense the presence of God in this place. I mean, this is the sanctuary. We know that we are the church, but it's something about the space where you meet God and God's people. And so the pulpit and right here at the altar are my favorite two spaces.
Powerful, powerful. Before we leave the virtual space, could you tell folks who may never have watched the live stream, how can they access it? Is it Facebook? Is it your church website? Is it something else?
It's most definitely, it's my church, it's the church website, www.mountcalvaryshelby.org. And also our YouTube channel, Mount Calvary Baptist Church, our YouTube channel. So we're strictly YouTube. We are shared on Facebook. Facebook Meta has a lot of things that if you play live music, they'll shut you down. So we basically have a YouTube channel. And also if you go to our website, you can access it there as well.
And the music ministry is substantial here.
Listen, I will put our music ministry up against anyone. And, if I boast in Jesus Christ.
Indeed,
but
indeed.
we have a great music ministry, and I'm so proud to be their pastor.
Yeah, awesome. Anybody who's encountered you or anybody who's encountered Mount Calvary knows that you've got a motto. And the motto is the phrase, beyond familiar. What does it mean to live beyond familiar?
It means that you are living by faith. You are living by a substance that is uncomfortable. And you are trusting God to take you places that you can't imagine that you'll go. That's the life, I believe, of a believer. Is that how do I wake up in this brand new day that I've never lived before and do something I never did before? How do I impact lives that I've never seen before? So the teaching is, how do Mount Calvary, we live beyond familiar every day in every way? How do we live in such a way that people see something about us that's different, that's not familiar, that's not the same, that causes people to pause and say, what is it about you? So now we can open up and tell our story. And so who wants to be the same? Uniqueness has its place. And I think that we as being children of God, disciples of Christ, we are called to not do it the same way as the world. We are called to do it beyond familiar and to trust God to do things that will absolutely blow our minds. And so that's living beyond familiar. It's making that impact every day, and even allowing us to pause in what we call sacred pauses to say, wow, God, you did it again. So that's living beyond familiar.
Is it possible for us as Christians to get too comfortable?
Most definitely. And I think in so many ways, that's where we are. For me to continue to deal with the familiar, to be comfortable, who wouldn't want to do that, right? Because for me to be beyond familiar, it means I have to take a risk. It means I don't know what's going to happen next. I can't figure it out. I can't even control the situation. And so I think that's what faith is all about. It's all about trusting God to take me places that I don't even know the next steps, but I trust that He's already ordered them. And so that's the living beyond familiar that we're trying to catch, but yet teach, and hopefully people will walk by that faith and not by sight and live beyond familiar.
Faith helps us approach the risk and take a chance.
Yes, yes.
So let's talk about young people. Churches care about young people. Universities care about young people.
Right.
So we have the common challenge of trying to attract young people to our congregation and to our classes.
Right.
And these young people live in a world of distraction.
Most definitely.
What is your message to college-age members of your congregation who are trying to figure out what religion should and does mean to them?
Right. And that is a tough one because, like you said, they have so much going on. And really it starts with family life. You know, how is family? What's going on with family? What do you want out of life? And really helping them understand that don't run from challenges. Understand that you have a purpose in life, that you're valuable. And I think every young person is trying to figure it out like we were. We had, I think, some more stable guidance of maybe parents there with us, guiding us through. I'm not saying that parents are less than what we had, but I think you have fewer of that. And so now when they come to church, you have a lot of young people who've been exposed to stuff that they can't even handle. I don't think we as adults can handle. But they've been exposed to things, I think, way too soon. Things that's causing them to maybe not even pursue their purpose or not even go to school or to become better. So I think we got to be those who fill in the gaps that says, you can still do this. I think much more than anything, young people need to know you matter. You are needed, you are valuable. And then guide them through of understanding about religion and also relationship with God through Christ. Because I think a lot of young people are asking questions. Whereas back in the day, you could just tell somebody, God's gonna do this. And I know He will. Now young people say, how you know? You know, so
Show me.
Show me. That's it. So we have to be more intentional in our teaching. We can't just say, just get over it. Why? Because you have this Z and Alpha generation who's basically going to ask the question and say, I need to know why. And you need, and we need to be intentional to help them with those steps. I think that what I'm trying to do here and with our student minister is walk hand in hand with them. And instead of telling them what to do, listen to them and ask them, where have you been? What do you want? Why? And I believe so many times young people, they just need to be heard. And I believe that once we hear them, understand their concerns, then we can provide guidance and building that relationship. And so I think that even in our case with young people here, is setting that example, is influencing them to say, hey, why not take this path? Why not do this? You can't just stay in Shelby. Why not be the first in your family to go to college, to go to school? I never done it. I didn't do good in school. Well, why not try the community college route and then transfer? So just trying to find out where they are, but listen to them, try to understand where they are and not try to push them and make them be what I am, but hear them and understand who they are. And I think once you do that, they will provide you the keys to help guide them to whatever path they need to be on.
If they come to you, as I'm sure they do, and say, Pastor, why should I think about going to a Christian university? You did.
Yep.
What's the value? Why shouldn't I go to one of these big state schools?
Yeah.
What's in it for me at a Christian university?
For me, I would stay with relationships. I would let them know that you're from. It's not to say that I know that you want to get out of Shelby, You don't want to have anything to do with Shelby anymore. That's all you hear. I want to get out of here. But I think for me, it's relationships. And no matter what university, big university you want to go to, state or whatever, I think for me, it's being in a Christian school, being guided by my faith and my principles, and understanding that I need relationship. I need to be guided. I need to know that I have a God who's going to help me navigate this crazy life that I'm living. And so I would guide them and say, the reason why I would say to you, choose this Christian school, a small school, is because you need relationships. You need to be nurtured and guided, but also you need to find your footing, especially coming from a small town. Are you ready to take on Raleigh? Are you ready to take on whatever big state? You may think you are, but maybe you're not. Give it a shot. So I think, again, listen to them, where they come from, and but also say about relationships and guidance.
Good stuff. So Lamont, I've known you for 5.5 years. I met you early upon my arrival at Gardner-Webb. I've had the privilege of hearing you preach. I've heard you preach a couple times in here.
Right.
Powerful, effective. I've heard you deliver a commencement address at Gardner-Webb. Powerful and effective. You are just an amazing communicator. How much of that is innate ability? And then how much of that is something that you learned or had shaped by your experience in a divinity school?
Yeah, I know I'm called to preach. I know I am. I know I'm called to not only preach, but also pastor. But I also knew in that call that I need to prepare. And so when I say, you're called to ministry, I also say you're called to preparation. And so, whether it's other ministers that's coming through, I'm like, you got to go to school, And so that was a no-brainer for me, even though I was effective in the way I communicate, my style. Much more than style, I needed to have substance. And the only way I could have substance, I need to get in a theological school and become educated about the text that I'm preaching. And so even though I knew that, man, at 17 years old, I remember it like it was yesterday. The church was slam packed. There was over 50 people who came and responded to the altar call. But that was all to God be the glory, right? I could have said, oh, I got it. No, thank God I had a pastor, Dr. Clinton Feimster. I'm so glad I had a pastor to stay on me and guide me and say, no, you need to go to school. You need to prepare yourself. You got a good skill, got a good gift, but you need to go now cultivate that gift. And so I believe the beginning of it, understanding what I had, it was my responsibility now to develop skills and to nurture that gift. And so that's why I chose the path to come to Gardner-Webb. I was going to do North Carolina A&T and become an engineer. And my dad was a carpenter. He's retired now. I was going to take over his business and do all that. But the Lord had other plans. And of course, Gardner-Webb being in the backyard, me being from Kings Mountain, it was a no-brainer. And for them being a school, a Christian school, Baptist school, I know I need that foundation when it comes to religious education. And so me understanding I had this gift, I also had the responsibility to cultivate that gift. So that's where I'm at when it comes to the preaching.
We think you chose wisely. Tell us what was the hardest part of Divinity School? Was it the Greek, the Hebrew?
Actually, I excelled.
Did you?
In Greek.
Okay.
Even Hebrew I thought was going to trip me up.
Okay.
I'm trying to think what was difficult. I loved it.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I loved it. I think maybe Kanoa's theological classes, maybe Dr. Cowan, the late Dr. Cowan, his Old Testament classes. Oh God, I think we just, we got Gerald Cowan, God rest his soul. That was a difficult point, but I think I just loved it. It's like it was like going to church every day. You know what I'm saying? It was like I knew I was called to do this. And it's something I loved, I enjoyed. I just love learning about the narrative of the Bible and how could I help people through this narrative, right? Fast forward, graduate, start here in 2003. I have a bachelor's of arts, religious education, new pastor. Many would think, hey, I'm good. I got a degree. But I understood that I wanted the people that I'm pastoring, I just didn't want to stay at a level to where I couldn't help them grow. And so for me, going back to even do the Master of Divinity, it was not me collecting a degree on a wall. It was, how can I help these people grow? And I know that if I'm not growing theologically, I can't help them, I can't challenge them. And so that's why I started back to say, okay, how can I learn some more? So again, pastoring, during that time, my son was born. So you got a 2-year-old, coming in. She's getting ready to turn 3, and now wife pregnant again, and
that's a full plate.
That's a full plate. Going to school full time, here full time, new pastor. But I loved it, and I look back, I'm like, man, it was nobody but God. How did that had to be such a blur of a season? But it was a season that I would never exchange. I learned so much in that season. I wish it could have went at a slower pace. But I knew that through preaching, through pastoring, I knew I had to get better. I had to get better for the people that I was leading. I owed it not only to God, but I owed it to the people to tighten up my craft, to be the best I could be. Because again, as well as I know, if you go to a surgeon, you got to have major surgery on your brain. You ain't gonna have nobody up there say, hey, so what's your qualification? You know what?
This is how we did it 30 years ago.
Exactly. You're like, I don't have much, but hey, this is what I think gonna work. No, we're dealing with people's lives, people's souls, right? So I take that to heart, that I'm going to have to answer for this season, right? And so I wanted to make sure my craft was tight, as you could say, right? As an athlete would say, I want to make sure I'm tight with my skill. I want to make sure I'm good. And so the same thing with pastoring, with preaching, I owed it to God, but I owed it to the people to be on my game, to be the best I could be, to make sure they can get home alive. And home alive is get to heaven.
Sure.
Yeah.
You're clearly on your game, and I would encourage any and everybody watching this, if you have not been part of a Lamont Littlejohn service, come here to Mount Calvary once, twice, as many times as possible. So there's preaching, and there's teaching.
Right.
And then there's the other hat that you wear. You are an adjunct professor. You
Yeah.
have taught for us at Gardner-Webb.
Right.
What's your favorite course to teach, going back to where you once were a student? And how, if at all, does your approach to the classroom differ from your approach to the sanctuary?
Yeah. Worship through proclamation. I mean, that's what I'm currently doing. I've also taught Life and Works of a Minister. But it's good because I can now tell these stories in that class, these classrooms. In other words, I'm back because I want to help you succeed. You have people in that classroom who are pastoring or who are doing some type of work in the church. And so not so much of just teaching the curriculum, but I also can come back and also offer to them my path. And I want to make sure your craft is tightened. And so, I think worship through proclamation I love that class. Again, it helps people develop a sermon, a text, a manuscript, and making sure they don't take any shortcuts when you're teaching and preaching the Word of God. And so I really value that class because I believe a lot of times people shortchange the sermon, or they try to skip here and there, and they don't do honest research with the text. Like, the text is so golden. There's so many nuggets in that text. And for you to do a disservice there, for you to be so lazy and not do the necessary studying and the time and the effort it takes to prepare a sermon, you don't need to waste your time and get up there and so-called preach. I can say that in that classroom and help them understand that this is serious business. Part of it is the practical side of them actually preaching a sermon, that they're given a grade. But just to go through that process of helping them, and also what it does, it also continues to hold me accountable, sharpen my skills, help me to brush up on some things with the approach of sermon preparation. And so most definitely Worship Through Proclamation, the preaching class, is the favorite class I love to teach.
It's got to be gratifying to see somebody you taught then come out to a church and knock them out.
Yeah. And we've had several that we have invited to do our worship encounter or different other preaching services. And I know they get here like, oh, I'm preaching for Dr. Littlejohn. You already preached for me. You know, you already got the grade, go ahead preach now. And so it is gratifying to see their growth, but it's also gratifying to have, I had one student, he was what you call a non-manuscript preacher. So he does his preparation. He gets up and he preaches from memory. And so I tell the people, I need to see your manuscript. Whenever you do your preaching in class, you be free to do what you want to do, but I need to see a manuscript. And that day, for the very first time of his ministry, he says, he preached from a manuscript. And I'm telling you, he knocked it out of the park. Oh God. After the class, he came to me, he says, Doc, I owe you a lot. I said, what? He says, I was terrified. That's why I never preached from a manuscript. I was terrified. I just went up there. He says, but Doc, you've taught me so much, because now I'm not all over the place. I felt like for the very first time of preaching, I felt like I knew how to preach. And so for him to say that, I'm like, to God be the glory. Wow. You're making a difference.
There's a win.
There you go. There you go. And I think even now, I'm not sure if he went back to just non-manuscript, but I think he still uses it. But for him to say, for the very first time, I felt like I knew how to preach. That's what that class is about. That's about making those who are preparing for the gospel ministry or preparing for the life of ministry. That's what those classes are about.
So my manuscript here says, shift gears a little bit in our conversation.
Okay.
You and I share a common love of several things, but the one I want to go to is sports, especially college sports.
Most definitely.
Your son is a college quarterback.
Right.
Your daughter played on one of the most successful basketball teams in Gardner-Webb history.
Most definitely.
Why do you think athletic competition is such an important part of developing youth, of the combination of learning and adhering to a faith and a university experience? Why does it matter for our young people?
Man, there's so many angles. I mean, we can sit here and talk all day about it, right? Number one for me, again, I think it's nothing hidden there. It's relationship, right? You're on a team. Even if you're a tennis, you got an individual sport, you're still on a team, swimming, whatever. But I believe it promotes that team concept, building that relationship, that nobody's bigger than the team, that we need each other. It's that pull and tug, is holding each other accountable. But athletics presents so many highs and lows. And I believe what develops athletes are not when you're winning. Oh, we love to win, right? But it's when you have those challenges. It's when adversity hits that you really begin to learn so much about yourself. right? How do, you down in the game? We've seen it so many times. People are down. Yeah, they come
Too
back.
many times.
Too many times. But how about the time we actually come back and win,
There
right?
you go.
It's like it showed you that you didn't give up.
Yep.
You didn't quit. And I think in this season, in this time, so many people run from challenges. Every time it gets hard, here we go running. Face it, deal with it, because you really don't understand your potential, your capacity until you are faced with that. And so for when you come to athletes, it's all about those challenges time. It's not anything that's going to be handed to you. You got to go earn it. The best thing about athletes and athletics, competition, right? It's about how bad do you want it? Do you want it bad enough that you're going to fight, you're going to claw, you're going to give it everything you have? As they say, you're going to leave everything on the court, you're going to leave everything out in the field. And the gratification of winning or hosting that championship is not that game. But it's all of the early morning workouts, the sweat, the tears, the injuries. It's everything that had to happen to get to this point. It's about the journey. That's what it's about. And so I believe, man, I would tell anybody, whether it's the intramurals or whatever, be a part of a team, compete. And when you fail, I think when you fail, that's when you learn the most. Now, the whole thing is, are you going to stay there or are you going to get back up? You get back up and you get back in there and let's do it better this time. But it's all about the journey. And I think athletics teach us so much about life. Those young men and young women out there competing, man, those are the ones who are going to be our future business leaders and things of that nature. You're teaching them how to become a man, how to become a woman, but through it all, they are understanding that team concept. For example, Lamia, who's down in at Life University doing, chiropractic school, she was just telling me, she said, Dad, a lot of people are struggling, with the study habits, things of that nature, and time management. And one thing she said, she says, I'm used to it. I had to juggle being a student and an athlete. I had to get up at 5 o'clock, do weights and do practice, then be in my 8 o'clock class. So she refers back to her life as a student athlete. And now that's helping her in chiropractic school to understand that you got to be on, the time management. You got to have this done. You got to study here. So as you see, it's following her throughout life. And she, even early on, she's able to refer back to it and say, man, this ain't nothing for me.
And I hope she's wearing that ring from that Big South Conference Championship at Gardner-Webb.
She makes sure she keeps it up there. She'll flash it every once in a while.
No, but I think you're right. I think for me, really what's gratifying to see is fierce competition. And at the end of fierce competition, young men and young women taking a knee with their competitors and praising the glory of God
Most
together.
Definitely. Most definitely.
And that's wonderful to see. We see that at a place like Gardner-Webb. All right, let's get a little heavy for a moment. January 20th is Martin Luther King Jr. Day in the United States.
Right.
And as you know, Dr. King often observed that 11 o'clock on Sunday morning is, quote, as he said it, the most segregated hour in American society.
Yeah.
It's now 2025. Is that observation from half a century ago still true, in your opinion?
Unfortunately, it is. It's sad. And I believe you and I have had these conversations. I believe that diversity scares us. Anyone or anything that's different from us makes us uncomfortable. And I think what has happened so many times in houses of worship, instead of seeking the presence of God, we are seeking comfort. And one thing about being a body of Christ, no matter who you are, your ethnicity, where you come from, side of the street you was raised on, it's all about Him. It's all about God. It's all about Christ. And so we got to leave all of that at the door and check that at the door before we walk in a place of worship. But I really believe that the different styles of worship, not only just amongst people of different ethnicity, but even people the same. You know, you have what we call worship wars in the church, where certain people like only the hymns, or certain people want the band, the stage, the smoke, the music, the lights, right? And we don't know how to blend it.
Right.
Like, we are so smart. We don't know how to do 2 or 3 things at once during the same time of service. Again, anything that's different makes us uncomfortable. And I believe that even living beyond familiar, that makes us uncomfortable because it's calling us to be different. Mm-hmm. And so I think even in that aspect, but yeah, when it comes to you have more mixed congregations, more congregation that looks like the world. It's so sad that, again, at 11 o'clock, 10 o'clock, 9 o'clock, because worship times is varied now, you go to the black church and you go to the white church. And that's sad, because I always say from this surface level, you're not going to have a so-called black heaven, white heaven.
Right.
It's going to be children of God, those. And I pray we get it together. But I think it's going to take us being comfortable with people who are different from us.
Do you think universities maybe hold a special role there? Because
most
you
definitely
come at 9:25 on Tuesday morning to Dimensions, which is our chapel, and it's everybody. It's the mosaic of our student body. Or 8 p.m. on Tuesday night to the gathering. It's everybody. It's the great melting pot. Do you think we have the opportunity
most
to
definitely
move the needle
It starts there.
Yeah.
It's just like the athlete. Whatever they are experiencing during those seasons, 4 or 5 years, they're now able to carry that throughout life. It starts there on that campus when it comes to the worship moments, multiracial worship moments. When you leave that campus, don't disperse and go back to your separate corners. You take that and you create anew if you need to be a beacon, to be a trendsetter. So yes, it starts on that college campus.
Good stuff. So Lamont Littlejohn, you've just assumed the role, thank you for saying yes to this role, of chair of the Board of Trustees at your alma mater.
Right.
What are your hopes? What are your dreams? What are your aspirations for Gardner-Webb University as we move into the future?
Right. And I think, Doc, you know as well as I know, Gardner-Webb is a special place. It's a unique place. It's a place, it's in a small community. It's about relationships, community, and hopefully we can continue to carry that on. Building those relationships, showing our students, our faculty, our staff, their value, their meaning, but also living beyond familiar. Doing things that's different, doing things that's challenging, but doing it together. We know there has to be hard decisions made. We know that there has to be challenges because, again, we are competing against other folk in that world. And we want those students at our campus, not down the street, and surely not down...
Fill in the blanks.
Surely not down at Campbell. We want them at Gardner-Webb.
There you go.
And so there are things that we have to do. There's, like we just have so many new improvements on campus. And like you said, those students are asking, what you feeding? Yeah, it's all about what they're eating. And trust me, I have 2 college students, one that went to Gardner-Webb, one is at the other campus, and that's what he's talking about. Man, we got to get better. We got to get better food.
Yeah.
And so that is key. And so we just got to learn how to continue to do it together, but also face these challenges. And there's a lot of challenges that's facing our university, other universities, that we got to face it head on. And we got to do it beyond familiar. And so that's my hope as I take this task, one that, to be the chairman of the Board of Trustees. Never that I think I would do that. But I think I could play a role in bridging some gaps, helping people understand that we can do this together. and assisting you as much as I can and assist others to let them know that this is a beautiful place. This is a place that has legacy, and we can do greater things, but we just got to do it together.
We're excited for your leadership.
Right.
So we're going to close our conversation with a few lightning round questions, if you will. First one being best memory from your time at GWU. It doesn't have to be a divinity class, but just overall best memory of your time spent there.
It has to be the Cornell Lounge. That place on Lindsay Hall, I think it's 204, maybe something like that. And the reason why I say that is because those are the places that we don't have to deal with school.
Escape.
Yeah. Or you can ask somebody like, "What you put on that question?" But it was relationships formed. It was meeting people. It was a nucleus of us, and we was all brothers and sisters, right? It wasn't no big I, little you. It was truly what that lounge is. It's a fellowship. It was a melting pot, to say. It was us getting to know each other, laughing. If someone was having a bad day, they could vent. They could have someone to hear them. I as much as I love the Hebrew and Greek and all that other stuff, man, if I had a class called Cornell Lounge, I
take it a few times.
Exactly. So that spot there, just like I said, pulpit, altar here, that spot there. And I think if you ask a lot of students that comes out of the Divinity School or the religious education part, I think they would name that spot, the Cornell Lounge, as one of the areas that we grew the most. We learned about each other's, and we learned about each other's journeys. And it was fun times, sad times there, frustrating times there, but it was a coming together. It was truly koinonia.
The power of place.
Yes.
Next question, most cherished hymn, either that you like to sing or that you just like to close your eyes and listen to it being sung.
Pass me not, O gentle Savior. Hear my humble cry.
Goosebumps every time?
Goosebumps. Goosebumps. And so, just to know that I don't want to fail God, I don't want him to ever pass me by. I don't never want to miss what he's doing in a certain season. Again, I want to make sure my stuff is tight. I want to make sure I'm doing what I need to do, even if that means go sit down somewhere and rest. Even in that moment, pass me not, O gentle Savior.
Aside from Jesus, figure from the Bible who intrigues you the most.
It would have to be Joshua from the Old Testament. And the reason why I say that is because it's a lot like my story here at Mount Calvary. When I started here, I was only 26 years old.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, and I followed...
It's 3 years ago, right?
Exactly. That was only 3 years ago. And I followed a giant of a man named the late Dr. Sam Raper, who was, city councilman. He was really huge, a huge figure here in Shelby. And he was 91 years old when I got here.
Wow.
And so from a 26-year-old, 91, I see that as a Moses Joshua type of effect. And, me coming here, understanding that, hey, this is where this is at. I'm not trying to really fill his shoes, but trying to make my own shoes. And I understood that going to this promised land, going to this new phase of ministry would be a journey. And so Joshua, arise, you be strong and be courageous. You're a 26-year-old boy. I got kids older than you,
You've heard that a few times, right?
Oh, most definitely. And it was all, you're still pastor, but I got kids older than you. Just want to let you know. But I had those moments, those first 5 years had to be strong and courageous. But also, I had to learn how to be patient. I had to learn how to love people and also how to love my predecessor. I was told that, with Dr. Raper, he was still here. I told somebody if I had to name the grass after him, I would. Because I understood that after being here 35, 38 years, half this congregation, all of it, you probably baptized.
Sure.
So I did not want to offend him and also to offend them. So it was
Was
a
he in
lot.
the front row?
He's the front row every Sunday. And I made sure I say, give an honor to God. Everybody, someone, let's celebrate the Lord. Amen. And let's give honor to our pastor emeritus. That was the key for the first 5.5 years. Of course, he passed away in 2009. First 5.5 years, that was the cadence as I stood. Mm-hmm. And I believe because the way I honored him, that's why this ministry is so blessed. And so I would say Joshua, just navigating that new phase of moving into a promised land type of newness of ministry, a beyond familiar understanding of ministry. So Joshua would be that figure.
That journey that you speak of, more than 3 decades now, anything in particular that you're proudest of in terms of how you've built this ministry, this place, this congregation, your community outreach?
Yeah. The proudest is to see the people grow, to see the people get it, but also to have trusted God through COVID and the people to sign off on purchasing a whole nother campus. Mm-hmm. For us to purchase a whole school campus, North Shelby, and turn it into our community life center, it's always been my passion. And I told the church several times that I just can't be your preacher that stands in the pulpit on Sunday and then see you on Wednesday and that's it. I don't flow like that. Like that is somewhat boring to me, right? No knock against anybody who does that. But I'm a preacher about community, out and about. I love people. And I just don't want to stand here every Sunday and say to the people, God's going to make a way. Yeah. And we never see it. It's all theory. We need to be doing ministry not only beyond familiar, but beyond Sunday. Mm-hmm. And so I want people to know that God can feed those who don't have food and clothe those who are naked and those who don't have access to health care and those who don't have access to workforce development, those who don't have access to child care, those who don't have access to just understanding community and other resources. Not only do we preach about it in theory, but it can happen practically. And so that's what the Outreach Center, the Community Life Center is all about. And for the people to say, Pastor, we trust what God is saying to you. And to be able to purchase that, not just any season, during COVID, when nobody was in here and we come out and, we purchased that and 3.5 years later, you have community partners, you're doing partnerships, you're doing ministry beyond familiar, you have a health clinic over there, you have partnership for children, feeding kids, reading kids, you have our after school care, you have Gyra Ministry who's partnering with Second Harvest. You have so many events that's taking place. On any given day, you may have 100 to 150 people on that campus. And we're doing ministry beyond Sunday. Mm-hmm. So Mount Calvary can say, you know what, we're actually open 7 days a week, not just 2. So my most proudest moment is being like a Joshua and being able to reach the promised land. To be able to see something that is fruitful, and for the people to believe, not just in me, but to believe that God can make all things possible. And so as we continue to grow, because we're far from finished. I still think I still have some mojo. I still have some passion to do some other things that's beyond familiar. But to be able to do that task and to trust God in a COVID pandemic to purchase something and it continue to flow, that's amazing. And so that's I most definitely got to say that's one of the proudest moments.
Holy boldness.
Yeah.
Last question.
Yeah.
when you're not preaching.
Yeah.
When you're not teaching or serving the community, and I congratulate you
Yeah,
on all those fronts.
yeah.
What does Lamont Littlejohn enjoy doing? Do you get any free time?
Yeah, I have to schedule it. I do. I have to schedule because I have to tell myself, turn off the brain. We even this year we're in, our theme is the year of rest, understanding how to rest our soul, our person, our being, and how to have what we call sacred pauses and throughout the day. But I can honestly say, Doc, that being with my family, we're very close knit. Now that they are at school, we're trying to make sure that we do something in the summer, something in, around Christmas. But being with them, being with family, I'm a homebody. You know as well as I know, when you're around people all the time, just sitting at home on the sofa, doing absolutely nothing.
It's good for the soul.
Oh my Lord. Oh, hallelujah. Bless his name. I don't, doing other, we do all that. But when you can actually turn it off and just sit there, have some chips, and watch Netflix or whatever, man, that's golden. That is like, wow, because it don't take all of that. Just something simple like that, being with family, but just relaxing in the lazy boy and doing absolutely nothing. It's like Carowinds, Disney World, all the above, right?
It's lighting you up, I can tell.
It's the thrill, Doc. But stuff like that, it's just something simple of just, sitting down, watching TV, or just sitting down and letting the TV watch me.
And you earn that.
Amen. Amen.
Listen,
Yeah.
thank you, my friend.
Thank you,
I
brother.
appreciate the
Thank you.
conversation. I thank you for all that you're doing.
definitely.
Congratulations on this and everything
Yeah.
that you've described.
Yeah.
And thank you for staying engaged with your alma mater, Gardner-Webb.
Most definitely.
We
most
wish
definitely.
you a happy and a healthy 2025.
Same to you, my brother.
And to all of you out there listening and watching this show, I want to invite you to continue to follow Gardner-Webb. Follow us on social media. Follow us on our website, gardner-webb.edu. Come visit our campus. Come join us for worship in Dover Chapel. Come get to know our students, our faculty, our staff. You will be glad that you did. So for First Downs, I'm Gardner-Webb University President William Downs. We'll see you next time in the Springs.